My name is John Passfield, and the title of this reading will be L.M. Montgomery, Video 11, Folk Tale 2, Maud, M-A-U-D. Now, Maud is her middle name, L.M. Montgomery, Lucy Maud Montgomery. So here's the novel, L.M. Montgomery, I Gave You Life, a novel by John Passfield. Now, this is an historical photograph of the actual L.M. Montgomery in 1938. Now, in 1938, with another world war looming and her own personal problems threatening to overwhelm her, acclaimed Canadian author Ellen Montgomery begins to write what she has decided will be her final Anne novel. As she works on the new book, she recalls the days when Anne of Green Gables became a worldwide literary phenomenon and the dilemma that she faced at that time. Whether to write a series of novels in which Anne would perpetually remain the child the world had come to know and love, or to allow Anne to grow to adulthood with all the agonizing torments of the one who had given her life, L.M. Montgomery. Now, we're talking about three novels. L.M. Montgomery, I Gave You Life is my novel in which L.M. Montgomery is a character. In this novel, in my novel, she is writing her novel, Anne of Ingleside, which she has decided will be the last novel that she will write in which Anne will be a character. Now, it's quite natural, of course, that as she's working on the final Anne novel, her mind goes back in memory to her first Anne novel, Anne of Green Gables, the first novel in which Anne appeared. After the writing of which and the publishing of which she had the opportunity to write a series of Anne novels, she made a decision about whether to keep Anne as a child in every one of what turned out to be 8 novels, but now she's asking herself whether she made the right decision, considering the fact that she herself has had a very difficult adulthood and life after Anne of Green Gables. So, I mentioned in an earlier video presentation that we humans have a mass of information in our minds, and that one of the things we do in order to seek to get some control over that mass of information so we can think about it and even to make decisions about it is that we simplify that information by selecting details and fitting them into familiar forms. One of the familiar forms to many people, and certainly to a writer, is the form of the folk tale. So the main character of this novel, L.M. Montgomery, the writer, takes the mass of information that she knows about her own life from birth to the present moment and shapes it into the form of a 16-sentence folk tale. I will read the 16 sentences of her autobiographical folk tale and then talk about them. So there are 16 chapters of thought in the novel. She's thinking about many, many things, including the 2 books I've just mentioned, but only 1 sentence in each chapter of thought does she devote to the folk tale of her life. So we have to ask ourselves, well, how important is this folk tale? 1 sentence could be the most important sentence in a whole chapter of thought. It could also be the least important sentence. Anyway, something to think about. There was a little girl who was born on an island. Now, I move to page 12. She was an orphan, or at least an orphan of sorts. Then page 20. She had 2 childhoods, 2 separate childhoods. Then page 28. One was enchanting and one was mundane. 36. One day, the little girl discovered an interesting thing. 36, we go to 44. There is the life that is made for us and the life that we get to make. Then we go to 52. So she made lives for all of her characters and left their lives at that. Never a thought she had for changing a single word. But her own life now was a tale of a different kind. She found she could live her life and live her life again. So she thought her life and lived it over again. Then she thought and lived and thought and lived again. Old age came, as it does for everyone. Not eager to leave, but willing just the same. She retained just one fervent wish as her candle burned so low. This is the last one now. That her hand could reach out from the casket for one last change. Well, that's an interesting last wish. And if you know the story of Ellen Montgomery, her hand did reach out from the casket for one last change. She had her son, Stuart, publish her journals, which were quite a surprise to everyone who'd read her books, everyone who'd known her personally. So that wish did come true, actually. I suppose one could ask, after reading this folk tale, the folk tale that the main character of this novel, Ellen Montgomery, creates about herself, how much factual information does this folk tale actually contain? I would say the answer would be not very much. Well, what does it contain then? I would say that what it contains is an attitude towards life, an approach to life, a way of responding to life. The attitude that it contains is that if one's life is not pleasing to one can rethink the events of one's life and relive them again in one's mind, and that one can continue to do so again and again and again as one travels through life, having experiences that might not measure up to whatever standard of enjoyment or satisfaction or perfection one might have. I suppose we're all familiar with the situation in which one has an opportunity to make a very barbed rejoinder to someone else's comment, or one has an opportunity to say something quite profound during a serious discussion, but that one doesn't think of that gem of repartee, that gem of wisdom, until it's too late to employ it in the conversation. And it's often said that the beauty of being a writer must be that one can dream up perfect conversations and put them in a novel or a play, and that the perfect rejoinder can be thought of days, weeks, or even months later and still be put in its proper place in the fictional conversation. So, I can see a person reading this folktale and saying, well, thinking about life and revising it, it's a logical thing for a writer to do. But as the writer of this novel, I, John Passfield, would claim that even though a writer has what one might call the physical chance of thinking of an ideal word or phrase and even situation and going back and placing it in a manuscript, it's common, I believe, for all people to revisit the people, the situations and the events of their lives and recreate them. Often, after something that's happened, we ask ourselves what exactly went on there. And since we do not have a satisfactory grip on the situation as it was happening, it's only natural that we recreate the situation in our minds. I suppose then we have to ask ourselves how close we are staying or even want to stay to the original experience when we recreate it after a distance of hours, days, or even years. How close, we can ask ourselves, am I, the reader of this novel, to the character of L.M. Montgomery in the way in which I review the events of my life? So this is my novel, L.M. Montgomery. I Gave You Life. It's found on Amazon if you want more information. It's found on my publisher's website, rocksmillspress.com, rocksmillspress.com, where there is more information. At my website, johnpassfield.ca, johnpassfield.ca, there's 2 free books. They're full-length books. If you click on them, you'll get to read them. Click on the cover icon. One's a planning notebook in which I planned and wrote the novel, and one's a reflective journal in which I reflected on many, many aspects of writing, but also of life, of course, since writing, if it's any good at all, is about life. While I was reviewing the novel and polishing it for, 6 weeks, maybe a month, hard to remember now. At any rate, if you're interested, have a look. Lastly, I'll just say thank you for watching this video.